Commander Elena Rodriguez stared at the glowing data pad in her six-fingered hands, her three hearts beating in perfect synchronization as her species had evolved over countless millennia. The crystalline implants along her spine pulsed with neural activity as she processed the most bizarre assignment the Galactic Council had ever issued in her 40 cycles of xenobiological research. "Study, humans," she muttered, her iridescent scales shifting from deep blue to confused orange. "But they're barely a Class 3 civilization. They haven't even achieved proper space colonization." Her research assistant, Crix, floated nearby on shimmering energy tendrils, his gaseous form rippling with equal bewilderment. As a member of the Nebular Collective, Crix existed as pure conscious energy and found the concept of biological limitations particularly fascinating. "Commander," Crix's voice resonated through harmonic frequencies, "the Council specifically requests a comprehensive biological analysis. Apparently, multiple species have filed reports expressing deep concern about human physiological irregularities." Elena's bioluminescent patches flickered with skepticism as she pulled up the preliminary reports flooding her display. The data was staggering in its implications. The Zephyrians, whose crystalline bodies could survive in pure methane atmospheres at sub-zero temperatures, had noted with alarm that humans required an extremely precise mixture of gases just to maintain basic cellular function. Even slight variations in atmospheric composition seemed to cause immediate distress or death. The thermoids, silicon-based life forms who thrived in temperatures exceeding 300 degrees Celsius and could literally swim through molten rock, were completely baffled by humans' incredibly narrow temperature tolerance. According to their observations, humans could only function within a tiny range of thermal conditions, a limitation so severe it should have made planetary colonization impossible. Most shocking of all, the immortal ethereals, beings who had transcended physical death through consciousness transfer technology over 1 million years ago, had discovered that humans actually died permanently. Their biological function simply ceased after what the reports called a brief operational period, and unlike every other known sentient species, they possessed no backup consciousness storage or regeneration capabilities. "This data must be corrupted," Elena said, her voice carrying harmonics of disbelief. "No sentient species could evolve intelligence with such catastrophic biological defects. They should have gone extinct before achieving tool use." But the reports continued. Humans apparently required constant chemical fuel input through something called eating, needed regular unconsciousness periods termed sleep, and most bizarre of all, their bodies seemed to actively work against their own survival through processes called aging and disease. Crix's energy form pulsed with confusion. "Commander, how could such a biologically compromised species not only survive but develop space travel, complex societies, and advanced technology? By all calculations, they should be extinct." Elena reviewed the Council's orders one final time. The directive was clear: infiltrate Earth using biomimicry technology, observe humans in their natural habitat, and determine how such a fundamentally flawed species had not only survived but somehow managed to develop capabilities that were beginning to attract galactic attention. As their cloaked research vessel approached the third planet of the Sol system, Elena activated her biomimicry systems and began the complex process of disguising herself as one of these impossible creatures. Her three hearts synchronized into a single rhythm, her scales retracted beneath synthetic skin, and she felt the disturbing sensation of her body beginning to age, a process she found deeply unsettling. "Crix," she said, watching Earth grow larger on their viewscreen, "I have the strangest feeling we're about to witness either the most fascinating biological disaster in galactic history, or discover that everything we know about evolutionary biology is completely wrong." The planet below seemed peaceful enough, covered in blue oceans and swirling white clouds. It looked like any other inhabited world, giving no hint of the biological mysteries that awaited their investigation. Elena materialized her human disguise using the ship's advanced biomimicry technology, though she had to suppress several involuntary reactions as her body underwent the disturbing transformation. The sensation of having only one heart was profoundly unsettling, like trying to walk with one leg. Her protective crystalline scales dissolved into soft, vulnerable flesh that felt horrifyingly exposed to environmental dangers. Most unnervingly, she could actually feel her disguised body slowly deteriorating through the aging process, cellular damage accumulating with each passing moment. The biomimicry system had crafted what appeared to be a typical human female form, complete with the bizarre hair filaments that humans grew from their scalps and the primitive calcium-based dental structures they used for food processing. Elena practiced human facial expressions in the ship's mirror, finding their crude emotional display system both primitive and oddly expressive. She'd chosen to begin her observations at what human databases identified as a hospital, apparently a specialized facility entirely dedicated to repairing their constantly malfunctioning biological systems. To Elena, this seemed like the most logical starting point for studying their physiological failures. On her homeworld, medical facilities were rare since her species had evolved beyond most biological vulnerabilities millennia ago. "Excuse me, are you the new consultant from the Medical Research Foundation?" asked a human female approaching Elena with what her cultural database identified as a smile, a bizarre facial contortion that somehow communicated friendliness by exposing their inefficient bone-based dental system. Elena nodded carefully, having spent hours practicing the peculiar human gesture. "Yes, I'm Dr. Nova Chen. I specialize in unusual biological conditions and adaptive physiology." She'd chosen the name randomly from human databases, unaware of the cultural significance. The human, whose identification badge labeled her as Nurse Rachel Morrison, began providing Elena with what she called a tour. Elena's concealed biosensors immediately began recording everything, but she found herself struggling to process the contradictory data flooding her systems. "Well, you've definitely come to the right place," Rachel laughed, producing harmonious sound waves that Elena's database indicated expressed amusement. "We see everything here: trauma cases, chronic conditions, surgical recoveries. Humans are remarkably resilient, but we sure keep ourselves busy fixing what breaks." As they walked through different departments, Elena's hidden sensors went into complete overdrive. In the emergency ward, she observed humans who had survived what should have been immediately fatal injuries. Bones fractured yet somehow maintaining structural integrity, massive fluid loss that hadn't resulted in instant systems failure, and most shocking of all, several humans functioning normally despite having various internal organs completely surgically removed. Elena watched in amazement as a human male walked past them, moving normally and even engaging in the social behavior they called conversation, despite having undergone major abdominal surgery just days earlier. "How is he not dead?" Elena whispered, staring at the patient who had somehow survived having his appendix, whatever that organ did, completely extracted from his body. "Oh, the appendectomy?" Rachel laughed again, that strange harmonious sound. "We don't really need the appendix anymore, it's vestigial. Humans are pretty resilient, actually. We can lose quite a few parts and keep going." Elena's mind reeled with the implications. In her species, every organ was critical for survival. Removing any component of their biological system meant immediate death. Yet these humans casually discarded body parts like they had built-in redundancies, backup systems, or some kind of adaptive biological architecture she'd never encountered. "Backup organs?" Elena asked, trying to keep her voice steady while her single human heart hammered against her ribs. "Not exactly," Rachel explained. "But human bodies are surprisingly good at compensating. We can survive with one kidney, parts of our liver can regenerate, we can even function with significant brain damage sometimes. Evolution gave us some interesting safety margins." Elena realized with growing amazement that she wasn't observing a species with defective biology. She was witnessing something far more extraordinary and terrifying than she had ever imagined. Elena's investigation deepened as she spent more time in the hospital. What she discovered challenged everything she knew about biology. Humans, despite their fragile appearance, possessed the most bizarrely effective healing system she'd ever encountered. She watched a human child recover from what the medical staff called a broken arm. On Elena's homeworld, fractured limb supports required complete bioreconstruction and months of regeneration therapy. This human child's bone had somehow fixed itself. The body had literally rebuilt the damaged bone tissue, often making it stronger than before. The human healing factor is remarkable, she noted in her log. Subject observed healing from cellular damage without any external bioenhancement technology. The body appears to have built-in repair systems that operate autonomously. But it got stranger. In the cancer ward, Elena met Dr. Martinez, an oncologist who explained how some humans' bodies could actually fight off the malignant cells. The immune system is incredible, Dr. Martinez said. Sometimes it recognizes threats and destroys them before we even know they exist. We've seen cases where tumors just disappear. Elena nearly broke her human disguise in shock. You mean the body fights itself to save itself? Exactly. White blood cells, antibodies, T cells, it's like having a microscopic army defending the body 24/7. Elena's species had achieved immortality through technological integration, but these humans had evolved biological warfare systems inside their own bodies. They were essentially walking biological battlefields where microscopic wars determined their survival daily. That night, Elena transmitted her findings to Crix. The humans don't just survive their biological limitations, they've weaponized their own biology for survival. Elena's research took a shocking turn when she began investigating the connection between human psychological states and their biological functions. What she discovered challenged the fundamental understanding of how consciousness and biology could interact. These humans had somehow evolved emotions into functional biological tools. Her investigation began in the cardiac unit, where she met James Patterson, a 55-year-old human male recovering from what medical staff termed a myocardial infarction. Essentially, his primary circulatory pump had suffered catastrophic failure, yet he remained alive. Elena was fascinated by this impossibility. Heart failure was universally fatal across all known species. The strangest thing, Doc, James explained, his voice heavy with what Elena's database identified as grief, was that my heart problem started right after my wife Margaret died. 43 years of marriage, and then cancer took her in just 6 months. The doctors say emotional stress can literally damage your heart muscle. Elena's concealed bioscanners confirmed something that defied all known biological principles. This human's emotional state was directly, measurably affecting his cardiovascular system. The grief hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine, were creating inflammatory responses that damaged cardiac tissue. Conversely, when James spoke about happy memories with his wife, his body produced oxytocin and endorphins that actually promoted healing at the cellular level. Your feelings physically change your body? Elena asked, struggling to maintain her professional composure. That's what they tell me, James replied. Broken heart syndrome, they call it. Who knew emotions could be so dangerous? Elena's amazement deepened when she moved to the maternity ward, where she encountered what she initially assumed was some kind of parasitic infection. A human female named Rebecca was somehow growing another complete organism inside her body, and both organisms were not only surviving but thriving in this bizarre biological arrangement. First pregnancy? Elena asked, her voice barely concealing her shock at witnessing what should have been a fatal biological invasion. Rebecca's face radiated with what humans called joy, her entire body language expressing profound happiness. Yes, and I've never felt better in my life. The morning sickness was rough the first few months, but now I feel incredible. My doctor says the baby's hormones are actually strengthening my immune system and improving my cardiovascular health. Elena's scanners revealed the impossible truth: the developing organism was releasing biochemical signals that enhanced the host's biological functions. The mother's emotional state of love and anticipation was triggering hormonal cascades that improved nutrient absorption, enhanced tissue repair, and boosted immune response for both organisms. The emotional connection between mother and developing offspring creates a biological feedback loop, Elena whispered into her recorder. Positive emotions generate chemicals that benefit both organisms' survival chances. In Elena's species, reproduction was accomplished through sterile technological procedures in laboratory environments. These humans had transformed it into an integrated emotional biological symphony where feelings literally became survival mechanisms. That evening, Elena transmitted her most startling findings yet to Crix. The humans haven't just evolved emotions as psychological phenomena, they've integrated feelings directly into their biological operating systems. Love enhances immune function, grief can damage organs, fear triggers protective responses, and hope accelerates healing. They've weaponized consciousness itself into a survival tool. She paused, reviewing data that challenged everything she thought she knew about the separation between mind and biology. Crix, these humans have achieved something we thought impossible, they've made their emotions into functional biological organs. Elena's investigation led her to the hospital's Rehabilitation and Sports Medicine Center, where she encountered what she would later describe as the most mind-bending aspect of human biology, their ability to fundamentally reprogram their physical capabilities through conscious effort and environmental demands. What she witnessed challenged every principle of fixed biological architecture known to galactic science. Her first subject was Marcus Thompson, a human who had suffered severe injuries in what they casually termed a motor vehicle accident. Apparently, humans regularly engaged in high-speed transportation using primitive metal vehicles, fully aware of the collision risks. The reckless behavior alone would have marked them as biologically defective in any other species assessment. 6 months ago, I couldn't even lift my head off the pillow, Marcus explained as he effortlessly lifted metal weights that should have been impossible for his body structure to handle. Elena's bioscanners revealed his muscle fiber density had increased by 40% since his injury. The doctors said I might never walk again. Now I'm deadlifting twice my body weight. Elena watched in fascination as Marcus's cardiovascular system operated at efficiency levels that exceeded his baseline genetic programming. You mean your body learns from the challenges you place upon it? Exactly, Marcus replied, sweat glistening on his reconstructed form. Use it or lose it, right? My physical therapist says the human body adapts to whatever demands you consistently place on it. Muscles grow stronger, bones get denser, heart gets more efficient. It's like having biological software that constantly updates itself. Elena's scanners confirmed the impossible truth. Marcus's skeletal structure had increased in density by 23%. His cardiac output had improved by 35%. His neural pathways had literally rewired themselves to accommodate new movement patterns. The human body wasn't just healing, it was systematically upgrading itself based on environmental feedback. Her amazement deepened when she observed elite athletes whose bodies had pushed beyond their species' apparent design limitations. She met Sarah Kim, a marathon runner whose cardiovascular efficiency had reached levels that seemed to violate human biological constraints. Michael Rodriguez, a powerlifter whose muscle mass had expanded far beyond his original genetic blueprint through systematic progressive overload. Lisa Chen, a swimmer whose lung capacity had increased by 40% through training adaptations. Most shocking of all, Elena discovered humans who had learned to consciously control what should have been completely involuntary biological processes. Brother Thomas, a monk from what they called a monastery, demonstrated slowing his heart rate from 70 beats per minute to just 15, a rate that should have caused immediate unconsciousness. Yet he remained alert, aware, and functional. Meditation and breathing techniques, Brother Thomas explained calmly. The mind and body are connected. With proper training, consciousness can influence autonomic functions. Elena observed yogis who could regulate their body temperature through mental discipline alone, maintaining normal core temperature in freezing conditions or cooling themselves in extreme heat. Martial artists who had conditioned their bodies to withstand impacts that should have shattered bones. The humans have created a feedback loop between consciousness and biology, Elena reported to Crix, her voice carrying harmonics of awe. They can literally think their bodies into new configurations. They don't just adapt to their environment, they consciously direct their own biological evolution in real time. Elena realized that humans hadn't just evolved, they had evolved the ability to consciously participate in their own evolutionary process, making each individual a laboratory for biological experimentation and improvement. As Elena prepared her final observations, she decided to investigate what humans called extreme survival situations, cases where their biology was pushed beyond all reasonable limits. What she discovered in the hospital's trauma archives redefined her understanding of what biological systems could achieve when consciousness and survival instinct merged into something unprecedented in galactic biology. She began by studying documented cases of humans who had survived weeks without food, days without water, and environmental conditions that should have caused immediate biological failure. But the most remarkable cases involved what humans called adrenaline, a biochemical compound that could temporarily transform ordinary humans into biological superweapons. Elena interviewed Lisa Martinez, a 32-year-old human female who had performed what could only be described as physically impossible feat. "I don't remember the exact moment it happened," Lisa explained, her voice still carrying traces of trauma. "The paramedics said my 4-year-old daughter Emma was trapped underneath our car after the accident. The vehicle weighed over 3,000 pounds, normally, I can barely lift 50. Elena's bioscanners analyzed Lisa's current physical capabilities while she spoke. By every measurement, this human possessed average strength parameters for her demographic. Yet medical reports confirmed she had somehow lifted a mass approximately 60 times her normal capacity. The human survival mechanism doesn't just override safety limitations," Elena noted in her research log. "Under extreme stress, their biochemical systems can produce temporary enhancements that transform ordinary individuals into physically impossible beings." Her investigation revealed accounts of humans surviving falls from heights that should have caused instant death, walking for miles on limbs with compound fractures driven purely by determination to reach help, and functioning normally for hours while suffering from injuries that should have caused immediate unconsciousness and system failure. The most extraordinary case was David Chen, a mountaineer who had survived 8 days buried in an avalanche with minimal oxygen, sub-zero temperatures, and severe hypothermia. "I kept thinking about my family," David explained. "Every time I felt myself slipping away, something inside just refused to let go. My body kept finding ways to keep going." Elena's analysis revealed that David's metabolism had slowed to near hibernation levels, his cellular oxygen consumption had decreased by 70%, and his pain receptors had essentially shut down, all controlled by his conscious will to survive. But perhaps most incredible was their ability to survive what they called heartbreak, emotional trauma so severe it caused measurable physical damage to cardiac muscle, immune system depression, and neurological disruption. Yet Elena observed humans who had not only recovered from such trauma but emerged psychologically and even physically stronger than before. "They don't just survive trauma," Elena whispered into her recorder, watching a support group of humans who had lost loved ones. "They metabolize suffering into strength. They transform damage into development." She observed how humans facing terminal diagnoses often lived far beyond medical predictions through what they called willpower. Somehow their consciousness could override biological programming when survival was at stake. Cancer patients who defied statistical survival rates, cardiac patients who recovered from supposedly fatal conditions, accident victims who healed from injuries that should have been permanent. "The human survival mechanism isn't just biological," Elena reported to Crix that evening. "It's a fusion of chemistry, psychology, consciousness, and what they call determination. They can literally will themselves to survive conditions that would kill any other known species. They've evolved the ability to consciously override their own biological limitations through pure mental force." Elena stood before the assembled Galactic Council in the massive crystalline chamber that had witnessed countless species' first presentations to galactic civilization. Her bioluminescent patches cycled through deep blues and brilliant golds, colors of profound revelation, as she prepared to deliver what would become the most extraordinary biological report in Council history. The weight of her discoveries pressed against her consciousness like a fundamental shift in universal understanding. "Esteemed members of the Galactic Council," she began, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated through the chamber's acoustic amplification systems, "my comprehensive investigation into human biology has revealed something unprecedented in our collective galactic experience. The question isn't what's wrong with human biology. It's how did they achieve something we thought was impossible." The council members shifted uncomfortably in their various environmental pods and energy fields. The ethereal representative, whose species had transcended physical death through consciousness transfer technology over 1,000,000 years ago, spoke first, his voice echoing from quantum resonance speakers. Commander Rodriguez, our preliminary data suggested humans were fundamentally biologically defective. They age, they die, they require constant maintenance, they suffer from countless maladies. That's exactly what makes them the most sophisticated biological system in known space, Elena interrupted, her scales shifting to the deep crimson of absolute certainty. They've transformed every apparent limitation into an evolutionary masterpiece. Elena activated her holographic presentation, filling the chamber with three-dimensional models of human biological systems. Respected Council, humans age, but aging creates urgency that drives them to accomplish incredible things within their limited time span. They die. But mortality makes them value existence in ways we immortal species cannot comprehend. They require maintenance, but this necessity forced them to develop the most advanced medical technology I've encountered. She continued, her voice gaining intensity. Their emotions, which we dismissed as biological inefficiency, are actually sophisticated survival tools. Fear protects them from danger, love motivates unprecedented sacrifice for others, anger provides strength to overcome impossible obstacles, hope accelerates healing beyond statistical probability. They've weaponized consciousness itself into biological enhancement. The thermoid representative pulsed with confusion, his silicon-based form glowing orange. But Commander, their extreme temperature sensitivity, their atmospheric requirements, have forced them to develop clothing, architecture, and environmental control systems that enabled them to inhabit every biome on their planet and eventually achieve space travel, Elena replied immediately. Every limitation became an innovation catalyst. They didn't overcome their biology, they partnered with it. Elena's most stunning revelation filled the chamber. Humans aren't surviving despite their biology, they're the only species we've encountered that has achieved conscious biological evolution. They can think their bodies into new configurations, override their programming through willpower, transform trauma into strength, and adapt in real time to environmental demands. The ancient cosmic elder, whose species had observed galactic evolution for 10,000,000 years, finally spoke with deep resonance. Commander Rodriguez, are you suggesting that humans represent a superior biological model to our own technological transcendence? Elena's scales shifted to the profound blue of ultimate understanding. Esteemed elder, I'm suggesting that humans have solved the fundamental equation of existence differently than any species in known space. They've made biological mortality into an evolutionary advantage. They don't just survive, they transform limitation itself into unlimited potential. She paused, then delivered her paradigm-shifting conclusion, Respected Council, there is nothing wrong with human biology. They've simply discovered something we missed in our rush toward technological perfection, that conscious partnership with biological limitation might be the universe's most powerful survival strategy.